All right, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Um, Hi, my name is Amy Dessenberg-Wines, and I help manage the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment, and am a member of Iowa's Employment First team. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I want to also thank IVRS and the DD Council for their continued leadership and investment in the Iowa Community of Practice, which is a collaborative effort with the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment since 2014. I'll be your host today in partnership with Gayla Harkin, who is also here next to me and is with ICE. And we will moderate today's webinar, Business Engagement, Part 1, Building Business Relationships. A couple of housekeeping items before I introduce and hand it over to today's presenters. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment's YouTube channel, as well as to IVRS's Employment First page. And that recording link will be shared following the webinar along with the presentation materials. If you haven't already, please subscribe to ICE's YouTube channel. Closed captioning is available, and you can see the link in the chat box to the right under CC link. You can use that link to do stream text, and the link was also shared in our registration invite for today's presentation. In order to ensure that everyone can clearly hear the presenters and hopefully avoid any technical difficulties, we have muted everyone and disabled cameras, so please be sure to share your questions and comments in the chat feature of Zoom. And I will help, and Gayla will as well, field and share any questions with our presenters. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll get started. I want to thank so much Brana Kreis and Michelle Kreft for joining us today. I have to just say, on a side note, they're probably two of the most brilliant, I want to say, business engagement, or really I wanted to say employer development folks that I know. And I think they have great experience and great techniques. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brana and Michelle, and thank you so much.
Go ahead, Michelle.
You want to introduce yourself first, Brana, and then I'll introduce myself and take off? All right. Well, I am Michelle Kreft, and I am the Director of Business Relations for Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And I get the pleasure of serving the entire state of Iowa and working with our business team across the state. I also get the pleasure of being a part of the National Employment Team. And I think one of the really unique things about the National Employment Team is that we have 80 VR agencies that join that team, and we really share strategies nationwide. And so, do you want to move into the next slide, Brenna? So Brenna and I just wanted to talk to you today about building relationships with businesses, and really the importance of building that relationship and serving the business as a customer. And so the term dual customer really came out of the Rehab Act amended by WIOA. And traditionally, Voc Rehab and many of our partners focused exclusively on serving only the job candidate, and we offered, of course, counseling and guidance, training, and job placement. Now with the second customer, our business partners, we're also focusing on their needs and offering, many of the same services. And so we're offering counseling and guidance, training, and job placement. You want to go ahead and move to the new slide? So under the dual customer approach, we're learning about the business needs before we ever even talk about placing a job candidate, or really about our own services. Really, I wanted to share a hot tip, and I hope you take this away today. Um, if you take nothing else away, understanding what kind of workers and skills a business needs, or really business intelligent, is what's going to make you a successful vocational rehabilitation counselor or a successful employment coach. And so, three things that all relationships have in common is they fulfill a common purpose or a need, they provide trust and support of one another, and they have effective communication. And I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about the difference between job development and really that business relationship. And we're talking about it's all about the relationship. And maybe an example of job development would be, I like to call it place and pray. I was a counselor 15 years ago, and I probably did a great deal of placing and praying. And I can tell you that they didn't work as well as really building that relationship. And so having a relationship with Quick Trip nationally, they just reported, we have had 49 hires in the last couple of years here in Iowa alone. And our turnover rate is 6%, whereas the average turnover rate for Quick Trip is about 20%. And that's really the heart of the relationship, listening to what the business wants, learning about them, and giving them what they need. And so the dictionary describes a relationship as the state of being connected with one another. And how a business relationship might work. You know, I think about like a friendship. When Brenna and I started to get to know each other, we started doing exactly that. We would be at meetings together, and we would find common interests, and we would talk to each other. And then maybe that grew into going and getting a cup of coffee together and continuing our conversation. That's really what it's like for our business partners as well. We shouldn't treat our business partners any different than we treat our job candidates. We need to be genuine when we meet with them and have no hidden agenda, otherwise known as a candidate. Um, so when Brianna and I go into a business, we are really just there to learn about the job candidate, or I'm sorry, learn about our business partners and learn about what their needs are. We want to know what their difficulties are and really trying to get to know that business. So kind of these are the steps that work for us. We start by doing that intake and really learning about what the business needs are, what their desires are, where they want to go. One question I always ask in that intake would be, what is one thing our agency could do to meet or exceed your expectations? We really want to know like how we can help them. Then the next step would be doing some consultation, following up on the intake, what we learned, maybe what our next steps would be, and then we're providing that training or writing the plan, like we would do with our job candidates. Then we might go back in and do an analysis and learn from the tasks that we're going through. Brenna, you're way ahead of me. We didn't practice this. I'm on slide 5. Am I taking too long? The next step. Thank you. And then we want to do the analysis, and this might be watching, interviewing other people doing the job, or maybe even doing the job ourselves. And then we together set our goals, what that's going to look like. After we've done all of that, after we really have that business intelligence, after we know what our business partners want, then we're going to introduce our job candidates. And Brenna and I have had a lot of conversations about people who maybe bring their job candidate in at intake or bring their job candidate in too early. And we feel really strongly, I think we both agree, that it's super critical that you get to know that business and you treat them with the same respect and dignity that you would treat your job candidates with. So on slide 6, so the business is our customer, and we oftentimes, think bringing that candidate is providing a service to the business. What I really want you to think about is serving the business. And when you introduce the job candidate too soon, or really your only goal is to get a placement, you are providing a phenomenal, an amazing, a rock star service to that job candidate. But you're really not providing a service to the employee or to the business. So think about, what is the business going to get out of your meeting, and really how are you serving them? And so slide 7, hopefully you're seeing that we do have 2 customers, and Brenna's really going to dive deeper into the how and some of those services. And Brenna, I love working with you. Thanks for everything you do. I just had to say that because you really, you are you are it. I was going to say something, but it wasn't appropriate. Brenna, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So the entire focus really needs to be on the business only when you're first starting. Although we think about the client, but we need to make sure that we're treating each client separately. So the business would be one client or one customer, and the job seeker or the job candidate would be the second. You're not going to begin the relationship with the client in mind. I know that we've been trained to say, I'm going to go visit a business with a client in mind so that we can bill. And Michelle and I completely understand that. However, you want to make sure that your main focus, even if you happen to go to with somebody in mind, your main focus has to remain on the business itself. There isn't going to be any discussion about the client, but only about the business. Your only goal is to begin to develop a professional and trusting relationship with the business, and which will in time develop into a partnership. So first learning about the business, but then down the road after you've met with them several times, how can we partner together is ultimately the goal. So step 1, be prepared. Do your homework before you contact a business. So when we talk about knowledge that you really want to learn, we're talking about what can you find out about that business so that when you go in, you're looking prepared and you're showing interest. So the history of the business, how did the business get started? What does the business specifically do? Are they in manufacturing? And if so, what do they manufacture? Or do they do marketing? Or what type of business is it? Their mission, vision, and values. We all talk about mission, vision, and values with all the agencies that we work with, and businesses have the same. We need to make sure that we're finding some way to connect into those mission and vision and values in order to develop this partnership with the business. Then look at community involvement. There are certain businesses that specifically do things in supporting nonprofits, or what type of community events do they go to? What do they participate in? Are they in a chamber? Who goes to the chamber meetings? And then who is who and the decision makers? You need to meet with the decision makers. And that does not mean that it's going to be the HR person. HR people do not necessarily have the authority to make decisions, especially when it comes to customized employment. So you have to find out who those decision makers are. I'll give an example of an individual that I worked with that wanted a job at Hy-Vee. It was going to be very customized. Couldn't get through to the store director. So I actually knew that they were having a cake decorating contest at Jordan Creek Mall. So I stalked them. He is basically what it came down to. I went knowing that the store directors were going to be present, and I cornered him at Jordan Creek Mall and was able to set up a meeting. So I'm not one of those people that likes to be ignored. And so that is,
you can get paid to stalk people, and it's not, well, it's a little creepy, but not too bad.
It was effective.
Yeah, but it was effective, and we were able to create the job, and she's been there for 3 years, so it's a good thing. So step one, play the investigator. What is the person involved in within the community? Common connections. So you might find that this individual belongs to a group that you're actively involved in, or maybe they're involved in the JCs and you're not a member there. It would be good to join the JCs. You can get a lot of connections that way. What is the person's history in the biz or in the field or in the business? What did they do before they joined the business that you're interested in? Or what's their history? How did they get involved in it? Did they work their way up the corporate ladder? Do you have a warm contact? Go on to all your like Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever resources that you have to where you can find those warm contacts, because warm contacts are going to get you in the door a lot faster than doing a cold call. We sometimes have to do both, but in my opinion, warm contacts are the best method. And then what is the preferred method of contact? So it might be email, it might be phone. You might have to go through a second person in order to get to the person you want to, but what's the preferred method of contact? Then the other thing that you need to start thinking about is speaking in business language. We all speak in human service language. We all speak in acronyms. We all use terms that a business is not going to understand. So for example, if I was to send out or make a phone call and introduce myself as an employment specialist, they're not going to know what an employment specialist is. Assist individual with disabilities, they're automatically going to get a visual in their head. It's going to be a physical disability. It's going to be the person with Down syndrome. It's going to be the person in the wheelchair. That's what they're going to see. Excuse me, in obtaining and maintaining employment, I'd like to do an informational interview. They have no idea what an informational interview is. And they may know what a tour is, but they're not going to know what the informational interview. So you need to start thinking in business language. The first contest, ask to meet, don't talk jobs. You're not there to find a job for anybody. You're not there to place anybody in a position. You are simply there to learn about the business. Don't talk disabilities. It's preventing stereotype thinking by the decision makers. So like I said, they won't get that picture in their head of what they think of as disabilities. A lot of businesses aren't aware that anxiety and depression is a diagnosed disability. So the visual is a huge piece of what decision makers have in their head. You're not hiding anything. You're using language that they're comfortable with, and you're creating an opportunity to educate. I can't focus on that number two any more than say we need to create these opportunities to educate people. They don't realize that when we're talking about people with disabilities, we're talking all levels of disability. When we're talking about accommodations, they're thinking big numbers, big money, and it's not. So making sure that you're really creating those opportunities to educate, and you're doing so by following these steps. Got a tickle in my throat. So business language, instead of it could be, I am a career advisor and retention specialist. They're going to understand about careers, and they're going to understand about retention. I assist individuals in exploring career paths. Instead of, I'm an employment specialist, I help people find jobs. I work with people with disabilities. You're not mentioning any of that in this introduction. In order to provide my client with accurate information, I come to the experts. I would appreciate the opportunity to meet with you to learn about the business, career paths, options, and if possible, receive a tour of your business. I will then take this information back to my client to assist them in making sound and informed career decisions. I'm not asking for jobs at all. I'm just asking to meet and doing an introduction. Contact the person using their preferred method of contact, which I just discussed. So making sure you find out the best way to contact them, and also filtering if there's somebody who filters their calls. So first impressions. career advisor, retention specialist with whatever your agency's name is. I assist individuals in exploring career paths and career options. In order to provide my clients with accurate information, I come to the experts, like we said before. I would appreciate the opportunity to meet with you to learn about your business, career paths, and options, and if possible, receive a tour of your business. I will then take the information back to my client to assist them in making sound and informed career decisions. Or you could do it a little bit more simple, but it's, again, the focus is business language. So when we talk about effective communication, and what Michelle and I have learned is that we're still using terms when we're meeting with businesses that businesses do not understand. So job development. They don't understand what job development looks like, but they do understand recruitment assistance. So this is something that you can provide in a business, that we can assist you in recruiting, bringing viable applicants, that type of thing. Job coaching. They don't really understand the job coaching piece, and in some cases, they've had experiences with job coaches that may necessarily not have been the best, and so that may be a word that, or a title that they're not comfortable with, but they can understand retention support. So how can I make sure that the people I'm bringing in are maintaining employment as well? Client consumer is a viable applicant. Viable is the key piece here. In order to keep a good relationship with a business, you need to be bringing viable applicants, and that is people that are going to fit into not only the culture of the business, the environment of the business, the tasks themselves, the level of natural supports that are available. You need to bring viable applicants for these positions. A lot of times what we're finding is people are bringing applicants, but they're not viable applicants to the positions they're trying to be hired for, getting hired for. So this is a key piece of it. If we don't start doing this and making sure they're viable applicants, businesses are not going to work with us, is what it comes down to. Michelle, you want to comment on that one at all?
I do. Actually, I have a couple things to say. Do you care?
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. And so, you know, it's really important that we learn the big business language and that we use the language, as Brana said earlier. As with any relationship, trust is the key to effective communication. And the dual customer approach means moving from talking to listening, and not using our lingo, but using the words that businesses use. And even thinking about business versus employer. I hear a lot of people say, I'm going to go meet with employers today. But if you really think about a business, the business does not define themselves as an employer. They're in business to provide a good or a service or a product. They are not in business to hire people. I oftentimes also hear, I'm going to go do some job placement. And Brana talked about this earlier. Job development, in my mind, means one outcome, single job candidate at a single job. But really, that relationship is looking at multiple outcomes and creating a pipeline of individuals for that business. Brana talked about this too, qualified versus job ready. I think we oftentimes say our job candidates aren't job ready, or are they job ready? But really the businesses don't know what job ready means. From their perspective, they're either qualified or they're not qualified based on the essential functions of the job. So it's super important that we refer to them as viable applicants or qualified candidates. The last one I was gonna touch on was productivity enhancement versus accommodation. And I know, Brana, you talked about accommodations earlier.
Right.
And sometimes when you talk about an accommodation, it puts a visual in the head
Right.
of a hiring manager, which means money. I mean, they're thinking about the bottom line. Typically, they're thinking accommodation, money. But when we use the word productivity enhancement, what we're really trying to do is improve the bottom line by increasing productivity. And the way that looks is going to be different for every single person, whether it be an accommodation in our term or universal design. But really, it's just getting the person trained.
I agree. I think the other piece of that when we talk about, my mind just went blank. I'm sorry. Oh, when we talk about job development, or we talk about the bottom line, if you can present at the time when you're starting, when we get further into this and how we can partner, if you can present something that is going to impact the business's bottom line, they're out to make a profit and they're going to jump on board. And that's, even with customized employment, the big thing, for say that you create a position where somebody's coming in and they're stocking office supplies, instead of having the person that they're paying $18 or $20 an hour to stock supplies, why aren't you hiring somebody maybe at $13 an hour to do that task? It's going to affect their bottom line. So keeping that in mind, that's also included in the business lingo.
For sure.
Okay. Ready for the next one?
I'm ready. You want me to take over? You just have to move the slides.
How about I do this one? Okay.
Perfect.
So the initial meeting, your starting point is on the relationship, and it's on the business only. So we're going to ask questions. Tell me about your business. How did you get started? What was your path to where you are now? What type of products do you make? Talk about the MVVs that you learned about. Ask them questions regarding that. You're going to do the 80-20 rule. And I know a lot of people have heard about this, but I am a true believer in it. People like to talk about themselves in general. They all do, or what they're doing or what they're passionate about. So let the individual you're meeting with talk. Listen, you're going to listen 80% of the time, and you're going to ask questions or respond 20% of the time. So the 80-20 rule is critical, and it's really good method of actually listening and really listening to what they're trying to tell you. Take a tour or set up a tour. If they don't have time to give you a tour on the first meeting, that's going to give you an opportunity to request a second meeting with the individual. Sometimes they're able to do it, sometimes they're not. So setting up that tour is important as well. It's going to give you a lot of opportunity to look at the environment, look at the work culture, look at whether or not there's natural supports that are easily identified. So taking a tour is very important. Make sure you're sending them a thank you. That may sound like old-fashioned, I guess, but not only are you going to thank them for taking the time to meet with you, but it also provides you an opportunity to maybe set up that second meeting. This entire time, though, you're not going to ask them about what jobs are they hiring for. There's no talk about jobs at all, only to learn about the business. So the next one is, this is for the second.
I would say,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, to add on to that, some of those questions that I feel are really important to ask in gaining that business intelligence and really becoming, the connector of the dots, right? By knowing as much about the business as we know about our job candidates, so that we're sending the best, most qualified people to the business. So some of those questions that I really like to ask is, if you had a magic wand and you could change anything, what would that look like? What is your highest turnover job, and why do you think that is? And can you describe your best employee to me? What really stands out about that person that makes them one of your best employees? Because what I'm doing from those questions is I'm gathering information about how I'm going to approach them with my next meeting.
Exactly. Okay. So the second meeting, this is the time to start building that relationship. So you've already met with them once. Now you're getting the opportunity to take a tour if you didn't get the opportunity at the first meeting. Making sure that you're asking questions. A lot of times what you're going to find is you're going to take a tour, and that business or the individual that you're meeting with is really going to tell you what their needs are. A prime example is, I had a coworker that I worked with and she met with the ARL, and the ARL basically, their workers are basically on a volunteer basis. They have very few full-time or part-time work employees. And so she went and she met with them, and they were very standoffish about what they, wanting to partner. And she got a tour, and along with the tour, the individual she met with said, well, we have a lot of laundry that has to get done. It stacks up all the time. And so this individual saw this big stack of laundry and windows that hadn't been washed, but what they found was that they didn't have enough volunteers to be able to take care of all those things. And so when they finally had the third meeting, they asked, what do you want from us, is what the ARL asked. And the answer was, you already told me what your needs are. And so they were able to partner. And so they created those positions out of the ARL that some people have gotten people jobs at, for the laundry and for people cleaning the windows and cleaning the kennels and those kind of things. So keep in mind that a lot of times you're on a tour, they're going to identify what their needs are. Identify possible waste of labor hours and costs. That's an example of when I said about office supplies and paying somebody $23 to stock supplies when it takes them away from their priority tasks. So how can we see where those labor hours are being wasted and the cost? That's when we can go in and we can create those positions of hiring somebody for $12 or $13 an hour to stock those supplies. So making sure that you're keeping out or asking questions, who does this? Who does this? Who's responsible for these specific things? Present the opportunity for a free job analysis. Businesses like things that are free. So if you can offer them something free, they'll say, well, if it's not going to cost me anything, sure. That gives us an opportunity to go back in and to really see other opportunities that we're looking for. Michelle, you want to add anything to that? Because I know you and I both agree that this is an important piece.
For sure. I think the second meeting is one of the most important meetings. I would say the purpose of your very first meeting, or as we call it, the intake in rehab language, is to get a second meeting. And this second meeting is where you are going to, like Rana said, take a tour and put down the jobs. And so in my mind, a job analysis is a piece of paper and a pencil, and you're writing down all of the different tasks. But that's completely different depending on your style. And so maybe you are breaking down those tasks in an analysis and really looking for inefficiencies, looking for ways that you can present back to the business on how they might be able to save some money if they did a job share or a job carve, or maybe you think completely outside of the box and come up with an idea that is brilliant. And they often come to you when you're watching the job because you're seeing things that they look at every day, but they're not seeing what you see. Maybe it looks like you coming in and doing some videotaping of the different jobs so that you maybe are a learner that you like to watch things over and over and you love YouTube videos. A great way to gain that business intelligence would be to get some recordings and come back and look through them so that you really understand those jobs. Maybe you're more of a people person and you are gathering that information by interviewing different employees and asking them what they think of the job and what are the most challenging things and what they like the most. What you're really doing is gathering as much information as you can so that you can bring it back to your job candidates. And I like to say not screen them out, but screen them in. Make sure they have the right skills, make sure they have the right credentials, make sure they are a good fit. And the only way we can do that is if we have spent time in that business and we have gotten to know them. A lot of businesses will say, you could be our HR director, you know the job better than I do. And I think that that's really the heart of it, is understanding that job. That is going to make you like the best voc rehab counselor or the best employment specialist ever if you fully get the job. And it does. It looks different for everybody, and it looks different in every business because we're really providing an individualized service to that business.
Okay. So fulfilling a common need or interest is the key piece of this. So a successful business relationship needs to have a purpose. It must fulfill a need for both parties and provide benefits for both. Those are the three things that you really want to identify, and making sure that this is kind of the foundation of how you're building that partnership or that relationship. We're there to fulfill a need for them, but the business is also there to fulfill a need for our clients. So we need to make sure that it's a win-win for both. And how are they going to benefit? Are there other things other than us bringing viable applicants that the business can benefit from, and that we can also benefit? So for example, it may be with the business that another benefit is that not only are, the focus is where we sit there and we support our client, but we're also an equal support for the business. And that needs to be a really big, really need to focus on that, and a big sell piece, because a lot of times what we find is, and what businesses have told us is, people get jobs and then job coaches disappear, and I never see the person that I initially met with. And so making sure that we're fulfilling that need and we're staying in contact with that business, even if it ends up that we don't have anybody for that job or for a specific position that they're hiring for, we still need to make sure that they're realizing they can receive benefits from us. It might be free training that we offer. It could be us being the pool where they contact us as a resource. Please send me any viable applicants for any other positions that I have open down the road. Because ultimately the goal would be for all of us to have businesses contact us and say, before we post this job, we wanted to reach out to you to see if you have anyone who could fill it. So the third meeting is your opportunity to present. What benefits will this relationship bring to the business? Bringing viable applicants to a business, that's huge for the business itself, because number one, it filters through the application process. Instead of them having to look at all the applicants, you're only bringing people that you know are going to be a good fit for the business and for whom the business would be a good fit for. Cuts down on hiring time. As I said, you're filtering through those applications, so it's cutting down on their hiring time. That cuts into their bottom line. So again, it's affecting their bottom line and the hours that they're using hiring people or going through the hiring process. Increases of productivity. That's a huge piece of it, because if you're spending a large amount of time through the hiring process and that type of thing, productivity's level drop. If you bring somebody in that's a viable applicant, productivity levels are going to increase. If you're having to spend a lot of time on training, then it goes the opposite way. So making sure an increase of productivity is a key piece of that. And Michelle had touched on that earlier as well, because it doesn't affect the bottom line. Free trainings to a business, disability etiquette training. We know that businesses have questions that are not politically correct, that they can't legally ask. Provide them the opportunity to do so in a no judgment zone. Our agency offers disability etiquette training, free disability etiquette training to every business that we work for or work with. So I encourage all of you to really create something that will answer some of those non-politically correct questions. Plus it's free training. And if businesses, like I said, they like anything that's free. So free training is a really big one. Business supports. Like we said, it's not just about the client, it's about the business equally. And so we're there to support the business. So if they have questions about how to address specific things with the employee that they hire, do we need to be in the meetings if they're having conversations about a new task that they're going to be taking on? Can we step back in when they're learning a new task and then step back out? Helping them facilitate just conversations in general, making sure that we're teaching them how to speak to their employee rather than to speak through us. That's a big one. I think a lot of people experience that, but making sure we're providing that support. So what costs can you save the business? Hiring costs, retention of employees. If we're bringing viable applicants, they're going to have job retention. It's not uncommon for people to get a job, and a lot of times they'll quit in 30 days. But if you find somebody that is a good fit for this business and the environment and the work culture and the tasks that they're doing, you're going to help with the retention of employees for the business. Wasted labor cost and hours, we already touched base on that. So the important rule, do not make promises which you cannot keep. I think that's a big one. Michelle and I both spoke with businesses where promises were made by employment specialists, and then there was no carrying out those promises, or they, like I said, they disappeared. Another piece of it, we talk about job coaching. Oh, the individual will have job coaching services, and then what ends up happening, from what we've been told by many businesses, is one day the job coach just kind of disappears. And then issues arise and they have no contact. Who are they supposed to contact to help them with these things? So making sure that you're not making promises that you're not going to be able to keep, and making sure that what you say you're going to do, you're going to do. Michelle, you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I was just gonna back up just a tiny bit on like either the second or third business, if you don't mind, Brenna. And remember when I said the questions that I ask, what would be, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? And maybe what are some of your highest turnover positions? How
Right.
I would then take those questions and develop them into my next step, depending upon what they would wave their wand and get. Those might be opportunities that our job candidates with more significant disabilities might be able to fulfill some of those time things. Like, I don't have enough time in the day to do all of the work that I need to do.
Right.
And that would be a perfect segue to come back and say, you know, I really heard you talking about how stressed you were. You have all of these tasks that you need to get done in a day. You're not getting them done. You're not feeling very productive at the end of the day. Have you thought about what it would look like if your magic wand waved and it looked like this? And it would maybe be a proposal for a job card. Of course, you would have to have more information like wages and that kind of stuff. They could really see how in the long run it was going to save them money. The other one, what is your highest turnover position? This is where I would go and really study that job and find out why it has high turnover. And I'm going to tell you that 9 times out of 10, the business is going to say, we have really high turnover because of this. And it's really something completely different. And so by identifying that and coming up with solutions, you're saving the business money, and most of the time, our job candidates are the solution to the difficulties they're having. The other thing I would say is that we would be committed to like helping them create a pipeline of talent. And we're in every single high school and every single community college. And so what better way to develop that pipeline of talent and serve our business partners than by introducing them to our high school students and helping those students become prepared at an earlier age, so that as they graduate, they have the certifications and the skills and the soft skills and everything that's needed to go right into employment. And the last thing I'm going to say on this, and I'm going to let you go on, Brenna, is the other thing that I think is really important that we do, and I like to do this in the third meeting, is I sit down with the business and I develop a pre-screening tool. And so it's some of those questions that they're going to ask in an interview, some of their non-negotiables. What would automatically rule a person out? I always ask, what are some of the keywords in the resume? Because we want to help the person get the job. And especially if it's an automated resume, they might be kicking people out for not saying the right words, right? And so I have our business team create what we call pre-interviewing. And it's a checklist, and we just go through everything, and we do it in partnership with the business because we talked about sending them the right people. And so we need to follow through and make sure that we're getting them the right people, and we've heard what they want. And each one is different because every business has different needs. And so we do have pre-screening tools for all of the different businesses. And that is a service to them, and it's a great service to them. Okay, you can go on.
Okay. So this is your opportunity to present, just as Michelle said, and who are the stakeholders in the relationship. It's going to be important that you identify all of the stakeholders that would be part of this this relationship now that you've really began to build the relationship itself. Remember to use business language. What are the roles of each of the stakeholders? Be specific about that. A lot of times there's confusion when people get jobs of who's supposed to actually be training the new employee. We run into that all the time. I think, sometimes they think, well, their job coach is with them, so nobody else needs to be there. They need to understand that the job coach is not the trainer. The job coach is there to support the individual in making sure they're learning the tasks as they've been shown and performing the tasks as they've been shown, but it's also to make sure that the individual is meeting expectations of the business. It is not there to train. They are not there to train. Put it in writing so it decreases the changes, it should be chance, not change, of confusion down the road. Like I said, a lot of times those things become blurred. And so we want to make sure that the business knows that you're not their employee, you're their partner, and the people that are in there to support the employee do not work for the business, but they are there to support the business only and the job and the employee themselves. So who are the stakeholders? We use the term employer, but with business language, we're using business. We talk about recruitment or the employment specialist, so the recruiter, that would be us. Viable applicants, supervisor, and the natural supports. Making sure that we're identifying who is the person that individual needs to go to once they do get a job. Who is that person? Who would they go to for support? The trainer. We need to identify who's going to be training this individual so that we, as support to the business and to the employee, can talk to the trainer to make sure that expectations are being met. Job coaching or retention specialists. We need to make sure that the job coach is communicating, for one. That's a big one. We also run into is that we're told that job coaches don't always communicate with the supervisor or the HR director or the connection person once we start cutting back on services, that the job coach just kind of dwindles away. It needs to be a mutual agreement. Anything that has to do with the relationship and the partnership has to be a mutual agreement between all the stakeholders. The new employee or the team member. Making sure that the new employee understands that you're not their trainer, that you are not their supervisor, making sure that we're supporting the new employee in not only in their job itself, but what other ways can we support that employee so they know how to call in, they're following all the rules, making sure that they're meeting those expectations. And then the other person, the other group is the agency or the business itself. So if what I hear also is we talked about how job developers just disappear. We know that we see a big turnover in employment specialists or job developers. And so making sure that that business always has a contact person for that agency. I can't emphasize that enough. If there's a change in job coaches, making sure that the stakeholder or the business actually has contact information for those individuals. We have a lot of turnover in our field. And so this is a key piece of it as well. Anything you wanted to add, Michelle?
You did a great job.
Okay. What have businesses told us? Questions, comments, and concerns. Viable applicants have not been presented. So basically what they're telling us is we're not bringing people that can meet the essential functions of the job with or without accommodations. And so these individuals are, what's ending up happening is these individuals that have been placed into those positions or have been hired, they're rolling back into job development because it's not a good fit for the business or for the individual. Job coaching stops before employee is ready to be independent. That's a huge one. I get it. A lot of times it's a funding piece of it. But if we step out too quickly, then we're compromising how successful that employee is truly going to be, and we're not supporting the business in the way in which we said we would do so. Job coaches do not show up as scheduled. That's another thing that we hear, that the job coach just doesn't show up. I'm not coming down on job coaches. I'm not trying to make you guys sound bad, but I am saying this is what we've learned from businesses, and I know Michelle has had heard the same type of things. What happens is when the job coaches don't show up or they step out too quickly, what happens is it puts a bitter taste in the business's mouth, and truly it makes it difficult for us to get people hired with that business because of a bad experience they've had with another agency. So keep that in mind, that you need to be good. You need to be not only there to support the business, and you need to be there to support the employee, but you're also representing the agency that you work for. And so it gives a bad name just for the agency in general if these things are not done correctly. Lack of communication between the job coach, supervisor, and human resources, like I said. When there is a change in job coach staffing, contact information is not being provided. That goes along with if the job developer or the employment specialist has left and somebody else is stepping in, their contact information needs to be provided as well. Main contact of the agency is not provided when there is a staff change, and issues are not being addressed and supports are not increased as needed. A lot of times what we say is we're going to support the business in those difficult conversations with an employee and help facilitate those conversations, yet when that comes up, where are the supports for the business? It might be that the job coach has already stepped out. So we need to make sure that businesses are able to communicate with us even after the job coach is gone. They need to be able to reach out to the agency and say, I need help with this individual that was receiving services from you. You're going to be able to maintain that relationship as well if you do that. Supports are decreased without agreement between all stakeholders. That's the key piece, is agreement between all stakeholders. If you're going to decrease supports for the individual, the employee, the business, the natural support, and the supervisor, HR department, or the director or the manager of the business, all of those people need, and the employee themselves need to be in agreement that supports are going to be decreased. If they're not, then you need to find out why they're not. They feel this is not the time. But making sure that everyone is in agreement is key.
Hey, Bronna, I'm just gonna add real quick. Do you care?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I was recently at a business, and they say you, but that's all of us, right? Because businesses can't tell the difference between the agency that we work for. We are just the people who come in that help people with disabilities get jobs. I mean, that's who we are in their mind. And so I was just recently at a business, and they said, you guys came in and you did a tour and you met with us, and you did all of this stuff, and then we never heard from you again. Yep. And the interesting thing is, of course, after apologizing, I said, what was one thing that we could do, like moving forward, to meet your expectations? And I was just blown away at her answer. And her answer was, well, could you just check with me on the phone once a month? That would meet my expectations. I'm like, that's such an easy thing to do, and that's something that we could all easily do, just to let the business know that all of the time they invested in us, doing the tours, doing the internship, doing those kinds of things, we actually paid attention, and we wanted to follow up with them, and we care, and we are invested. And so I just put on my calendar to send a monthly email to all of the different businesses, and it takes all of a minute. And so I would just encourage you, if you can't be at the business to provide those services, at least check in with them so they know you haven't forgotten about them. And then sometimes I hear we say, if you hire a person with a disability and they come with us, yeah, retention's going to be there and you're going to save money. And quite a few slides back, Bronna talked about not making promises you can't keep. And so I think one of the really important things with that is if we are talking about retention, that we need to be accessible to that business to provide those retention things and know that it's an issue before it ever becomes an issue. And that can happen if you do a monthly call with the business, if you do a monthly email with the business. Just make sure that you're following up and having communication and talking to them, and then addressing those issues before they become issues. Just not too long ago, I had another business call and they said, you know, we really want to partner with Book Rehab. The job candidates you send us, we're not having a turnover with, and when we are having issues, you guys are there to fix it. And so I hope that that's one of the nuggets that everybody can take away from this training. The business is our customer, and we need to make sure that if we are offering a service to them, we actually follow through and provide that service. If we don't think that we can provide retention, then let's don't talk about it. Let's only talk about and provide the services that we're willing to provide and to follow up on. And I'm going to go one
Can I step in just for a second, Michelle?
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is really important too, and that goes along this line, is when we're talking about viable applicants, you know, say that you've done all this work in creating this relationship with the business, and now they're willing to partner with you, and everything's going really well, and we're in a good place. And then they say, well, we need to fill this position. And you find that you look at your caseload and you find you have no one that meets that need. Don't send them anybody. Just say, I simply do not at this time have somebody on my caseload. However, could I check with other agencies to see if possibly they might have somebody on their caseload that could fulfill the job? The fact of the matter is, we're all in this for the same reason, and that's to get people's job, and it's to build relationships with businesses. And if we can't fulfill that need for the business right at that moment, there might be another agency that has a great applicant, a great person that would be a viable applicant, but they're not given the opportunity because they don't have the connection. And that's one thing I know Michelle and I feel really strongly about, that it can't be about this agency does job development better than this agency, or they get more placements than this agency. It's about business relationships, and it's about the future employee. And both of them are customers, and we are all working on the same thing. So if you don't have somebody that's a viable applicant, that's okay, because they don't want you to send anybody who's not. But another agency might. Michelle and I feel very strongly about this, and I think it's something that all agencies need to consider. One of the best relationships that I have had over the past couple of years is with Drake University, and I've had them reach out to me before to fill positions, and I've simply said, I don't have anybody on my caseload that would fulfill that, but I could send you, but I have found possibly somebody at another agency. So I'm maintaining that relationship. That trust is there. They're trusting in me that I'm going to contact another agency and try to find them somebody that would be a good fit for them. So yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
The only other thing I want to say, because we only have 2 minutes left, is from a business relationship standpoint, I would so much prefer that we individually spend more time with one business and devote more services to that business and really develop that relationship, rather than having 30 businesses that we're working with at once, because we're not able then to provide a service to the business if we bite off more than we can chew.
Exactly.
And so please, 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 as you're going out and meeting with businesses, really think about them as your customer and providing a service to them. And don't worry about all the other businesses when you're with that business. Give them your undivided attention. Get back to them super quick. Make them your priority. Have a sense of urgency. And I promise you're going to get placements from them. I would go so far as to say, if we're only getting one placement here and one placement here and one placement here, it's not a relationship. When you have that relationship, they want to hire your individuals because they want to hire you. They're hiring what you're bringing them.
Exactly. So you really, ooh, I'm echoing. You really need to be prepared for the word no. We've all heard the word. Take time to listen to the reasons behind those no's. Are they saying no, or are they hesitant and really saying maybe? And a lot of times it's due to a poor experience they've had in the past. Or have you done your job in educating them at this point? You know, making sure that you're coming up with answers, but you need to listen to what they're telling you is the key piece. Validating the business concern, repeat it in your own words what you have heard. Be prepared to give solutions to previous negative experiences. Like I said, a lot of times they're going to say, I worked with this agency and this is what happened, or I worked with people like you, like Michelle said, and this is what happened. Be prepared to give some solutions. Emphasize that the business is an equal customer and partner. That you're not just there for the employee, that you're there for the business as well and equally. And emphasize that concerns could be addressed and how you would address them. Be prepared to provide the solution. You are the one that they're going to look for as a resource to provide solutions to their employment needs. That's how you need to be viewed, that you're a resource for them. So making sure that you're able to provide solutions to concerns they may have. So that's into part one. Part two, we're going to learn about proposing and maintaining relationships, the role of the job coach and the employment specialist, and introducing viable applicants, including how to do that, and what supports and what do the supports look like. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Brana and Michelle so much. I know that you guys can't see us, but Kayla and I were sitting across from Brana and just shaking our head like, yeah, that's great stuff. Well, so Brana mentioned our next webinar is March 24th, and Michelle and Brana will take us through part two, and it'll be 1 to 2 p.m. And I also would like to encourage everybody to please click the link in the chat box to provide just some short evaluation information about today's webinar and share any ideas for future webinars that you'd like to see. So I want to thank everybody for their time and for joining us. We will send the link to the recording and the materials out in the near future, and we look forward to connecting with you in March. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.